Well, hello. I want to welcome you back again, and I'm so glad that you're tuning into this episode. If this is your first view of this particular topic, then I think it bears a bit of explanation. What I'm going to share is part of the reason that grief journeys vary so much based on the relationship that has been lost, but also the manner in which your loved one died and the other challenges that you have following the death. As part of the healing process, it's important to know that you expect your grief journey to be completely unique. In fact, not only will your experience be unlike anyone else's experience ever, it will be different than any other grief experience that you have had in the past or will have in the future. What makes each grief journey so different? Well, let's first examine the relationship factors. Consider these questions. How long was your relationship with the person you lost? Was it long or just days, weeks, or months? How deeply entwined were your lives? Would you categorize the relationship as intimate or more distant? How about this? Was the relationship more positive or was it more negative? And were there unresolved relational issues? Now, these questions just touch on how your relationship influences your grief. But let's even take it further. Let's pause for a moment and consider how your personal heartache can be shaped by your answer to just one of these questions. A good example would be the implications of a mostly positive relationship versus a mostly negative relationship, okay? If your relationship with your loved one was very positive overall, the source of your grief and depth of your pain will be about missing the good that you once had. On the other hand, if your relationship was more negative than positive, your pain of loss will be more about the unresolved issues, the unhealed relational wounds, and the disappointment of what you never got to have. So it makes sense, doesn't it, that you would grieve quite differently depending just on this one factor. The second major factor that influences your grief journey refers to the circumstances around your loved one's death. So consider these questions. Was your loved one's death sudden and unexpected, or was it predictable due to a long-term illness or advanced age? Do you attribute your loved one's death to some type of negligence, or was your loved one a very sensible and healthy person who lived intentionally and very cautiously? Do you think your loved one died at too early an age, or did she or he enjoy a long, satisfying, and meaningful life? Another question is, were you able to say goodbye in person or prevented by distance or some other factor? Were you the primary caretaker for weeks, months, or even years prior to your loved one's death? Now again, the answers to the questions reveal how your grieving experience is influenced by circumstance. Let's just briefly share a sudden death to an anticipated gradual death. If you experienced a sudden death of your loved one, you had to deal first with the shock of the unanticipated death. Such a death can be especially devastating, especially initially. Your focus was probably on just surviving. Maybe it still is. Conversely, a gradual and anticipated loss can often provide one the opportunity to grieve somewhat in advance of your loved one's death because you see it coming. In some cases, that can ease the blow of your loved one's death. Yet, a variation on that is if you were a primary caretaker of your loved one for months or maybe even years, you will likely struggle with an internal conflict between two things: the grief you feel at the loss and the relief you feel that this big burden has been taken off of you. I know that from personal experience. Now, there's a third major factor in determining the trajectory of your grief journey, and these are the practical implications related to the loss of your loved one and your life after that. For instance, what if you were suddenly a single parent? Maybe that's your case as you are watching this today, and you shared responsibilities, but now you have seemingly endless responsibilities because you can't share them. Did your loss leave you with financial stability, or are you in a precarious financial position? Are you surrounded by caring friends and family, Or when you look around, is there a complete lack of human support? Are you struggling with complex problems to solve? Or are things relatively stable in your life? Do you have your own healthcare challenges right now? Or are you generally healthy? You see, the foregoing are just a few of the endless combinations of practical issues you may have on your plate that would make your life tough or easier. Even if you weren't grieving, but having these complexities may cause you to stuff your loss-related emotions, and that robs you of the option to grieve at your own pace. Why do you stuff them? Because you don't have the space in your life to deal with them, or so it seems, and get through your busy and tough days. It's hard. The primary point here is that no grief journey is like any other grief journey. Every lost loved one will initiate a time of recovery, and so begins the challenge of healing, adjusting to the changes, and ultimately redefining your future life. Cookie-cutter grief journeys, they don't exist. One size just does not fit all. So how do you find your way through all these variations? Well, what you are experiencing might be compared to navigating the ocean. Sailors must contend with all sorts of weather conditions, strong currents, wind shifts that take them off course, and they still want to reach their intended destination, right? But they can't control any of those things, nor can they see past the horizon that stretches out before them. However, with a little help, they will make the necessary adjustments as they go, and eventually they will find their way to a new safe harbor. Everyone in the midst of their grief journey will be subject to all sorts of life demands and problems, along with the personal grief with which we all contend. Grief does not happen in a vacuum. What you are facing right now is indeed a significant and difficult journey. It isn't just a bump in the road, so let's not treat it like that. Now, our goal here is to offer you some guidance, assistance, and encouragement throughout your grief journey. We start by educating you about grief and loss, like what they are and the things around them. We want to normalize your fears. We want to acknowledge your pain and empathize with your struggle. As you learn and adjust, and you will, we will seek to guide you very intentionally to healing through intentional exercises. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, let's just focus on understanding about grief and loss as you contend with your current challenges. That's plenty. As I will often say, this is a journey, it is not a foot race. And while we'd like it to be over, all this pain and discomfort and not knowing what to do, trying to find shortcuts almost always ends up extending your journey, and that's even worse. Okay, that's enough for today. Let's wrap up this episode. I want to leave you with these key points as always. Every grief journey is different for every loss you experience. Your journey is greatly influenced by the type of relationship you have with your loved one. Second, the circumstances around your loved one's death. And finally, all the practical issues you must contend with during this time of mourning. Understanding and acknowledging the implications regarding your specific loss is foundational to your healing. So those are the points I wanted to make. And a stepping stone I'd like to leave you, and this is kind of an assignment. I'd like you to print out the downloaded outline that's attached and take the time to answer the questions. You'll see a download button right down below the video. Record your answers and then consider what you think are the most influencing factors in your grief journey, well, at least so far. I'm not going to leave you with a particular reflection today because I think I've given you plenty to think about already. So for now, I thank you again for tuning into this episode. I hope I offered you some helpful information, and that answering these questions, when you do that yourself, that will assist your healing process. I look forward to sharing more with you soon. In the meantime, please be well.